That's the kind of entrance you guys, the entrance music you guys like to listen to. It's kind of rockish, heavy metal. Like most of you should have been banging your head to that right now. You should be loving it. This is UFO Buster Radio, episode number 320. It's been a long time. I know you miss me, but I'm back. I had to take a few days off after the last episode. We had those technical issues. And when I tell you, it bothers me to the core when things like that happen. I feel like I'm not prepared, which really I'm not. Because, you go through, I think we've been through almost 2-3 months of episodes without technical issues. And all of a sudden, like out of the blue, there's all kind of issues just popping up. It drives me insane. And I mean, listen, it's a one-man show. I don't expect it to be perfect every single time. But when I think of not perfect, I think about me like saying the wrong thing or, not speaking fucking English. Things like that. I don't expect there to be technical issues, but there were. And I went back and I listened to it because the team in the live chat was calling it out. And it was the strangest thing ever, but that's the way it goes. I can't take it back. I can't go back and re-record it. Because it wouldn't be genuine, right? Shit happens. Shit happens all the time. And the last episode, 319, was a whole lot of shit that was happening nonstop. But talking about shit happens, that's what today's episode is about. Do you like that segue? Did that work for you? My segue for shit happens. Shit happens all the time. And it happened to Boeing recently. And I know that Elon Musk was just laughing his ass off in his office. As a matter of fact, he probably went down to Boca Chica, Texas, and took a swim in the cold-ass fucking Gulf waters just to celebrate what happened to the Starliner. We'll talk about that in one of our episodes coming up, one of our news articles coming up. And the other thing is that people are talking shit about contact with UFOs, Tic Tac, and most of you who follow UFOs have seen the story already that Commander Fravor's second individual in the F-18 Super Hornet, the guy that was recording the video of the Tic Tac UFO during the Nimitz incident, that he finally decided to come out of the woodwork. He finally came out and decided to corroborate what Commander Fravor was saying. So now you have the two people within the same F-18 Super Hornet talking about what happened with the Nimitz incident in the Tic Tac, which is entirely important. But his thing is, he didn't come out for a reason. There is something that kept him from coming out to support his commander. But we've heard about this for decades upon decades, that this is the feeling that it's a problem. But we'll get into that in a bit. Listen, if you don't follow the podcast, you might want to. I'm starting a bit of a charge, a calling for you, if you listen, to support the podcast next year in 2020. So even though in 2019 we didn't raid Area 51, we're going to raid New Mexico for the Roswell Festival. There's been a lot of negative stuff being printed about the Roswell UFO incident, the crash, in the last maybe 6 months. Alternate theories are coming out the woodwork. People are saying all these other things happened except for an actual craft crashing in New Mexico. As a matter of fact, the theories even go past the whole idea that the government was dropping dummies from a weather balloon. No. There's other things going on. So my thing is, why not send UFO Buster Radio in July of 2020 to Roswell to investigate this firsthand, but then Not only that, why don't I take you guys, the social media listeners, the podcast listeners, why not take you on the trip? We'll interview these people together. That's what's going to happen in July. But you've got to join me in that endeavor. More information to come out about that in January. So get ready. We're going to cut to a song right now, because I feel like ufology is calling me on so many levels. You know, sometimes I have these thoughts, right? And it's weird about the podcast. I see my demographics and I see where the listens are coming from. I pretty much, the only continent I haven't hit is Antarctica. Eventually, I'm going to start sending like letters by penguin, like walrus, whatever the fuck it takes to get someone in Antarctica to listen to the podcast. Now, for those of you that use VPN, don't fucking fake it like you're in Antarctica. I don't need that. I need someone, a scientist in Antarctica to listen. And there's a plan here. The reason I want them to listen, because I need to know, is there a hole in Antarctica that leads to an underground civilization? Are there UFOs there? I can only get that if I reach someone in Antarctica that's really in Antarctica, not someone sitting in fucking Jersey pretending that they're in Antarctica. I just want to put that out there, just to be clear. But that is the only continent that I haven't, that doesn't show up in my demographics. And then I wonder, for the folks that know me personally, you know, like, know me outside of being the Moonraker, how many times do they listen to the podcast and think, God, this can't be the same guy. Like, the guy that I listen to on the podcast is probably going to go into some burger joint, shoot the place up because they didn't put ketchup on his fries. I've got like a split personality thing going on here at times, but it's okay. Dr. Green is in the hisite, as they say out west. Wait a minute. He says penguins shit on Mars is making the methane. Something is listen, don't get me started. There is methane on Mars for a reason, and I can't even argue that anymore. Like, I literally, Dr. Green, you, I, everybody else listening to the podcast, we're going to have to wait until the fuckers in NASA decide that it's time to really test the methane. Not hang out at Gale Crater for fucking decades, which is not answering it, because if you look at their images of Mars through the cycles, they're in the wrong fucking spot, but I think they're in the wrong spot for a reason. That's just the way it goes. We have no control over that. Unless we can take a UFO Buster Radio listener, find a way to get him billions of dollars so that he can support our efforts to go to fucking Mars, drop a robot where it needs to go, not in the middle of fucking nowhere, and test what we need to test. We're kind of at the mercy of the powers that control space travel and exploration right now. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. We have to suck it up and deal with it. But eventually, someone, somewhere, in a blue-collar capacity, is going to reach someone that gives two flying fucks. And that someone's going to have the capacity to make shit happen. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get it together. You know, over the last few months, since SpaceX had that presentation in Boca Chica, there's been a lot of talk, especially from SpaceX, regarding why they did not receive the contract initially to have astronauts being shuttled between Earth and the ISS. And what they actually were awarded by NASA was the cargo situation, the cargo contract. So they had to take their Crew Dragon, strip the bitch down to only carry cargo. This is why we've been seeing SpaceX constantly, shuttling back and forth material supplies to the space station. And there were some reports, of course, that Elon Musk was kind of questioning why NASA was paying so much more for this Starliner, the Boeing Starliner, to take people to the ISS, bring them back, when they've been able to show that their Crew Dragon can make it back and forth for much cheaper, less expensive. Listen, let's be honest, NASA is part of the government here in the United States, and they're used to paying out the fucking nose for a lot of shit that people can produce for a whole lot cheaper, because that's the way business runs in the United States. Government business, at least, Private business, we try to do things a little smarter, a little bit more educated, but that might not be the case when it comes to what's happening right now. I'll be honest with you, it's too far fucked up. As a matter of fact, I forgot the link to the episode, the news article that I'm about to talk about in this episode. Boeing CEO Muhlenberg, I'm sure I fucked that up, resigns one day after Starliner historic landing. Isn't that fascinating? Let me just take a pause here, because in the United States the last maybe 15 years, when a company fucks up and it impacts a lot of people, what happens is that CEO is brought to Congress for a hearing. And every single time something goes wrong, that CEO, especially in the financial district, they'll take that CEO, or actually even automakers. They'll take him, they'll bring him to Congress, they'll ask him a bunch of questions. The CEO sits there with his perfectly, shaped hair. It's, makeup on, nicely manicured hands. And they really do answer every question, but then Congress makes it look like they're being rubber dicked, so they get all aggressive while the individual in the chair tries to stay calm. Right? Because that is what they're to face the company. So they need to keep the wits about themselves. They can't get fucked over on TV, because then the company has no faith in them. It turns out that apparently someone at Boeing has been seeing what's been happening over the last, decade and a half, a decade, and they're like, fuck. Apparently, our Starliner couldn't get the shit done. So they launched the Starliner on December 20th. Ready to go. They sat it on top of an Atlas V, which looked, really, when you put the two things together, it looks like a flying penis. So they shot their penis up, and the penis missed the mark. Yeah, there was some kind of a glitch. The glitch kept it from reaching the ISS. There were no people involved. It was just a test, and they fucking failed. The fucking thing, they decided to just bring it back. It wasn't supposed to come back until the 28th of December, but they brought it back on December 21st because they couldn't get it. They couldn't get the damn thing to the ISS. Meanwhile, on the back end, I'm sure Elon was loving it. He was probably like bathing in fucking rose petals, having somebody feed him grapes, and he's like laughing his ass off because Boeing fucked up. They fucked up so hard that their CEO resigned. They stepped down. But that's not, let me tell you, if this happened about, let's say 25 years ago, there ain't no fucking CEO is going to resign just because the company fucked up. They wouldn't do that. But because of what's been happening over the last decade and a half in the United States, the admirable thing for you to do is step the fuck down. Because they want to save face. They want people to actually feel like the company is still worth what NASA is paying. Not because come on, this is space travel. This is getting fucking rocket into space. It's not easy. Hell, look at NASA. How many times haven't they fucked up? Right? How many lives have not been lost to what NASA's doing? Here's a statement by Boeing, and this is what it says. A change in leadership was necessary to restore confidence in our company moving forward as it works to repair relationships with regulators, hint, hint, put an asterisk right there, customers, and all other stakeholders. The regulators regulate everything. It is why the financial financial sector is so fucked up right now, because everyone's afraid of the regulators. What the fuck do the regulators know about putting a rocket into space? Come on, stop fucking around. They don't know shit. They know zero. But it has people running scared. Yeah, we might think that the public sector is going to run amok and put all kind of stuff into space because they don't have to deal with the nonsense of the bureaucratic red tape. No, yes, they do. They absolutely do. This is an example of it. When your CEO has to give himself the boot just because your stink-ass ship can't make it to the ISS because it's supposed to, then you got problems. As a matter of fact, let's look at this. NASA put out a statement saying that the Starliner passed 2 critical tests. One is getting the shit into orbit without blowing up. The other is coming back safely without killing everybody that would have been inside the capsule. So why would the CEO quit? It makes no sense. I'm telling you. It's bureaucratic red tape. Boeing is trying to save face. And the fact that SpaceX has been calling out the situation between SpaceX, Boeing, and NASA, this gives proof that maybe NASA made the wrong choice with Boeing. They probably should have stayed with SpaceX to begin with. So we'll see. What is this going to mean for the contract between NASA and Boeing? Is it possible that this actually opened kind of like a little crack in the armor of that contract to have NASA consider the Crew Dragon do what it's supposed to do? That is take people, not fucking scientific experiments and supplies to the space station, but actually fucking people. We're about to find out. We are about to find out what the deal is. But still, if you make a rocket that's supposed to take people to the space station shaped like a penis, there's going to be problems. There's going to be problems. I'm sorry. But that's what that thing looked like. I don't know. Like, I felt like I was watching an Austin Powers movie when I looked at the takeoff for this. It's just crazy. I want to say hello to Guter. He is also in the chat box. And, hey. Oh, yeah, Dr. Green is there. What do you guys think? Do you think this is really the in for SpaceX? Are they going to take over this whole situation? I think so. I think this is it. I think SpaceX now has an argument for why their track record is much better than the Starliner. And hell, maybe the Starliner needs to be downgraded for the next few years because, I don't know, if I was Elon Musk, he's got a pretty good argument right now for how NASA screwed the pooch on giving that contract. If you want to know more or anything else, don't look at the description for this for this article because I fucking didn't even put in the link in there. But you can search by the title, so good luck with that. That's all I can say. And at this point, shit, this is the end of the world for everyone.
The satellites explode. It must be bad news overload.
the guys in the chat box live are talking about prototypes and Boeing and orange balls and stuff. Yeah, I saw orange balls by that Atlas rocket when the Starliner took off. I'm just saying, I think that the orange balls are not a ship, but more an accessory to the the rocket itself. I mean, come on, what else would it be? You know what? The Nimitz incident is a story that keeps on giving. Actually, I have the link to this one in the description if you wish to check it out. The title of this article is "A Navy pilot who recorded video of a Tic Tac-shaped UFO says he doesn't want to be associated with aliens." Chad Underwood, who basically sat on that F-18 Hornet with Commander Fravor, says, I need never did I want to be associated with ET. Not at any single point. It turns out according to the article, because we don't really know for sure, right? We're not talking to Underwood, but it says for 15 years, Underwood remained largely silent about the encounter, but he had an interview with the New York Magazine, and where he said that he kind of explained what it felt like to capture this thing, this Tic Tac, this vehicle of unknown origin on video. And here's a quote by Mr. Underwood. And it says, "At no point did I want to speculate as to what I thought this thing was, or be associated with, alien beings, alien aircraft, and all that stuff." Underwood told the magazine, "It is just what we call a UFO. Actually, Underwood, now it's UAP. I couldn't identify it. It was flying, and it was an object. It was as simple as that." Isn't that crazy? He basically does not want to be associated with any idea that this could be alien in any way. He says that Dave Fravor was like, "Hey dude, Bolo, be on the lookout for just something weird." That's what he told the magazine. So he wasn't expecting it. To be honest, I mean, do you think that Lieutenant Commander Fravor was in any way expecting to see what he saw, what he chased after on that specific day? I don't think so. Not one bit, because otherwise he would have come out a long time ago. What I found fascinating, I feel like I'm from Europe, I'm fascinated by it. He says, according to the article, the Underwood told also the New York Magazine that the thing stood out, meaning the Tic Tac video, or the actual vehicle, that it stood out to me the most was how erratic it was behaving. And he says the changes in its altitude, airspeed, and aspect were just like things that I've never encountered before flying against other air targets. But we know this. Underwood, we get it. Lieutenant Commander Fravor gave us the lowdown on this. What you're telling us that you're afraid to fall under the stigma of an experiencer, of someone who came across an unexplained object that no one can explain. And here's the funny thing. If you take a farmer, a trucker, if you take a taxi driver, even maybe a nurse, maybe a dental assistant, put them in the same situation where they saw a UFO and things like that, they would also be afraid of the same stigma. They would be afraid to be labeled as kooks because they said they saw an ET or a UFO and they did this thing, it did all these crazy things. But most of these other people would not have FLIR video that was taken on a several $1 million aircraft that was purchased and augmented by the military of the United States. That's the big difference. So if Tom, Dick, and Harry are running down the street and they see a Tic Tac and they try to take a, let's say, a nighttime picture or video, they'd be fucked because people would generally call them kooks. But Mr. Underwood, you were sitting in a $1 billion, $1 million, possibly with all the enhancements, $1 billion aircraft that at the time was at the top of the game, the top of the warfare game, right? Because the F-35 was still testing and failing, but you were in the F-18 Super Hornet. It's not like Tom, Dick, and Harry who are sitting in their little Corollas running down the street. Not only did you have the time, you had the place, you had the equipment to solidify that this was 4.2 far fucked up, but you're afraid of the stigma. And that is the power of disinformation. That is how we, the people, do not get the stories we need to hear. And it really, if it wasn't for Fravor coming forward, we would never hear from Atwood. We would never hear that he was the one who was recording the video at the time. Not one peep. Here's the other thing that was in that Department of Defense report related to the Nimitz incident. And this is what it says, and here's a quote: possibly demonstrated the ability to cloak or become invisible to the human eye. It might be able to operate undersea completely undetectable by most advanced sensors. Is there a problem with that? This is the first time I read this, and it might be because I missed it in the quadrillion articles that were written about the Tic Tac incident and the Nimitz incident. But if your government, again, for those of you in other continents and countries, this is not to you, but you might consider it to what might be happening in your own country, the extent to where they don't discuss this. But if your country is saying in a report that their most advanced radar systems, their most advanced aircraft at the time, came across an object that could actually hide itself, not just from radar, not stealth in the fact that it can hide from radar, but it can hide from human vision, that should fucking speak miles, light years to you. Like, you should just like sit back and just like, we're fucked. We're literally, this is not, again, Farmer Brown who is collecting freaking corn from his field in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden he sees a Tic Tac and then it disappears right in front of his eyes. This is a trained military officer in a sophisticated aircraft using sophisticated video that analyzes what it's looking at on many different spectrums. And if this individual and the folks that analyze the report are telling you that this aircraft can actually disappear from human sight, you should be concerned that there could be alien crafts all over the place constantly that you cannot see because it's being cloaked from your sight. Kind of like Star Trek. We see that Star Trek, many of the episodes, they don't want to disturb the beings living on the planet because they are not ready for space travel. They maybe have a few decades ahead of them before they can warp. And so they cloak their vehicle somewhere and then disguise themselves as part of the population, the indigenous population, and they go out and intermingle. We've had conspiracy theories about this for decades. People have been saying this for a long time. But is there truth to it? I don't know. But if you look at this report from a government agency, the Department of Defense of the United States, that says that it demonstrated the ability to cloak or become invisible to human eye, Why shouldn't we have all these fucking conspiracies? Why shouldn't we be freaking really worried that the governments of the world cannot protect us from something they tell us that we're not fucking seeing, that we're not experiencing? They're telling us people are not getting abducted, but at the same time in this report, they're saying that these vehicles can disguise themselves in a way that you can't physically see them with your own eyes. This is not something that some crackpot said. This isn't something that somebody drunk is saying at a bar. This is a Department of Defense report, an official report. People should be concerned about that. In a second, we'll talk about the crazy rubber dickers on the other side of the fence, like Seth Shostak of SETI, who likes to talk shit but makes no fucking sense. Frankly, you make no sense. Seth, you're like fucked up in the head. I just gotta say that.
This is how we do this. In one way, I'm yours. In one way, we're strangers. But I know for sure we got something in common that I know you won't. But we're so different. I speak Swedish, you don't.
I don't know. I just have to play that song because it gets you going. So if you are working late or you're working on Christmas Eve, that song should make you fucking happy. Like, yeah, I don't care if you're in the middle of your job right now when you're listening to this, you bring out your freaking gloves with the glow-in-the-dark tips, and you just start going off. Just do it. I don't care. I mean, it's Christmas. They'll forgive you. Eventually, they'll forgive that you did some of the crazy shit you did on the job during the holidays. Because, we forgive people for a lot of shit, especially during the holidays. So, Seth Shostak of SETI, just because I love SETI so much. Like, SETI is such a big fucking waste of time. I'm not going to lie to you. That's the way I feel about it. Plain and simple. And I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't know if this article was misquoted in some way as far as what he said. I think it was. I hope it was, because otherwise Seth Shostak is full of fucking shit and he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about, to be honest. And him and the Vakak and the Pocock, I don't know. The three of them just need to disappear off of this conversation altogether. Seth Shostak, in case you're listening to UFO Buster Radio for the first time, I'm Andy Moonraker. This is episode number 320. And we're talking about Seth, who is a senior astronomer at the SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligent Life, or lack thereof, in this case. Seth says this, which is quoted in this article. It says, if they're more than 35 light years away, there hasn't been enough time for our signals to get to them. And for them to decide, well, this is worth the money to go down there and fly around. He said the really good evidence that we're being visited still has failed to surface. Now, according to this statement, I don't know. He might have been tooking on some weed. He might have been, sniffing some cocaine, doing the crystal meth. I don't know what it is. But the last that I knew, if you go by his math, 35 years ago, we're making 1984. So it's Seth telling us that 1984 was the very first time that we had any kind of radio signals that could actually go into deep space. But that's the only way that we could explain his statement. That in 1984 was when humanity discovered radio, frequencies, television, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know what he means by fucking 35 light years. Because radio signals, according to science, travel also at light speed. Which by all accounts, he's telling us that it's only been 35 years that we've been transmitting into deep space. Where when you look at other studies and papers, we've been able to send radio signals into deep space for way longer than that. So I don't know what he's talking about. And why would aliens advanced enough to travel in between galaxies worry about fucking money? They would be doing just because they fucking felt like it. They're either looking for something or they want knowledge. And I would think that a measly blue planet that's throwing out radio signals since as far as the late 1800s, early 1900s, would be kind of fascinating once they got here. Oh, really, once they saw what the fuck we were transmitting. But again, to his point, they would have to be really interested in what we're putting out. They would have to actually be able to translate or actually decipher what we're transmitting in some way or another. But why wouldn't you be interested? We get fast burst radio signals that we freak out about. They're there for seconds or less than seconds. So why wouldn't we, as individuals looking from far away, be interested in the signal that has been nonstop for 50, 60, 70 years? Seth Shostak, the Vakak and the Pococks, they make no sense to me. I really feel like they're part of the modern day disinformation campaign. That's what I feel they're doing. You just can't trust them. Not one bit. Dr. Greenman says, He says, I think they have been sharing since the 1930s. I was looking this up because I'm not a fucking historian. I'm going to tell you that much. But I had to look it up. So the first signal was by Marconi back in the late 1800s. Guaranteed, not strong enough to make it out of where we're at into deep space. But come on. It only took a few decades to make it strong enough to where we're emanating radio signals from all over the planet, especially those that could afford radio, and then television, and so forth, and so on. And now that we have Starlink, come on. You're telling me Starlink is not going to put the little blue planet on the spot when it comes to alien life and detection? You can't write this stuff. It just happens. It just happens to all of us who are following these stories. And that's just the way it is. And I apologize for the CEO of Boeing stepping down. I think it was premature. I think he should have rode this. He should have rode this bitch. Yeah, like a bad Bronco. You should have rode it hard and broken it. Too soon for you to step down, buddy. But to me, that demonstrates that there is a weakness within Boeing. And a weakness that eventually SpaceX and Elon Musk are going to capitalize on. I'm telling you, the Crew Dragon will eventually be filled with crew. There will be people on that bitch eventually. And Starliner, I just feel Starliner is going to fall apart. And so is Boeing. This is the episode for today. UFO Buster Radio, number 320. Glad to be back. Took a few days off, but I know you miss me. But if you really miss me, retweet, share, follow, subscribe. Let your people know whatever continent you are. And if you know someone in Antarctica, come on, send them the damn podcast. I'm waiting for them to listen. I got some research they need to do. And you can only do it if you're in Antarctica. Thanks for Guter and Dr. Green for joining us on today. I'm pretty sure tomorrow is Christmas Eve, and I'm going to be on in some way or another, some capacity. And there are more announcements to come about the podcast, future podcasts, and this endeavor to get to Roswell or bust. Ciao.